Jesus in today's gospel reminds us that he has hidden these things, these pieces of wisdom from the wise and the learned, revealed them to the childlike. And one who probably would appreciate that is Moses, who we hear of in our first reading. Moses, who thought himself unworthy of the calling that God was putting on him, thought of himself as slow of speech. In our modern parlance, it would probably be thought of Moses having a speech impediment of some kind. And so Moses is called by God to lead the Israelites to the promised land, which Aaron will actually do, but which Moses will undertake at God's bidding, even though he does not feel worthy, he does not feel able. But as Jesus reminds us in the gospel, that the things hidden from the wise and the learned are revealed to the childlike, revealed to those who are open to the wonder and awe of God. You know, one of the, as we teach our confirmation students, we talk about the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and those of us of a certain generation remember the fact that one of those gifts of the Holy Spirit is fear of the Lord. We've, in some circles, moved away from that to calling it wonder and awe in the presence of the Lord, which I think actually is a better title, because when we have young people hear the word fear of the Lord, they think they have to be afraid of God. And that's certainly not the case. God does not want us to be afraid of him. We are called to have a holy fear, if you will, a healthy fear, of recognition of the power of God, for sure. But I think that appellation of wonder and awe in the presence of the Lord perfectly describes not only what Jesus is speaking of being childlike, of being open to the power of God, being kind of marveling at God's power, much like a child would marvel at some sort of revelation. You can see the bells go off, the lights go off, as they start to learn things and their minds and hearts expand, whether it be education of civic kind or spiritual. When they learn more about these things, how they become wise and learned, but hopefully never lose that childlike wonder and awe, that sense that Moses has as he approaches the burning bush, which is kind of a misnomer a bit, because while it was certainly burning, it was not consumed. Such the miraculous nature of God. And Moses is drawn to this presence, and drawn ultimately to God, and will give himself to this calling, and will lead the Israelite people out of Egypt into freedom from bondage and slavery to freedom, even though there are some missteps along the way by the Israelites, and they certainly don't take the most direct route. Again, I'm heartened by that, in a sense that my own route to priesthood was not a direct route by any means. It was a bit circuitous, to say the least, taking a number of years and a number of different turns along the way, but finally God and my plan aligning together, which has been undertaken for the last 28 years and so. But in doing so, being open to God's plan, to be open to the wonder and awe of God, to be willing to discover new things, to be able to recognize that this knowledge of the Father comes through a relationship, not unlike the relationship that Moses and God have, of learning, of growing on Moses' part, of understanding who God is for him, for his people, and for salvation, and undertaking this plan, not knowing necessarily what the next step would be, what the next move would be, but kind of leaving it to God to direct him, to guide him, and guide God's people, and to be open to that, to be recognizing the fact that God knows what we need, even before we need it, we know it, and that he has set the path before us. And if we are open to that calling, to be open to that path, whether it be straight or circuitous, to recognize that this path is meant to lead us to the kingdom. It is meant to lead us into all good things that help us to grow in faith, in hope, and in love. And all things being handed over to Jesus, who we are called to follow on this day, who we are called to listen to and to hear with our hearts, that we need not worry about what that plan is or how it is to unfold, but to trust that God has our best interest at heart, to recognize that God has indeed set the path before us, and we are about to walk on it and to journey on it, and like Sunday's readings remind us, to be that good soil, to be open to growth, open to knowledge, and open ultimately to God's love. May we as a people of faith come to recognize the plan that God has for each one of us. May we be open to that plan. May we be open to cooperating with that plan and doing our part in relationship with God through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ and the power of the Holy Spirit, to recognize that it is God who calls us into relationship, it is God who sustains our relationship, and it is God who, at the end of our earthly days, will call us into fullness of life, into his kingdom.